The story began with a rugby team from Uruguay called the Old Christians, a team of college students, most from wealthy families in Montevideo, traveling for a friendly match in Chile. The plane, a Fairchild FH-227D belonging to the Uruguayan Air Force, took off on October 12, 1972. Bad weather forced them to spend the night in Mendoza, Argentina, before continuing the journey on October 13.
While attempting to cross the Andes Mountains, the pilot miscalculated the plane's position due to strong headwinds. He believed he had cleared the mountain range and began descending early. The result? The plane crashed into a mountain peak at an altitude exceeding 3,600 meters.
Both wings tore off instantly, and the fuselage slid down the snowy slope like a sled until it came to a stop. Of the 45 people on board, 12 died instantly or within the first hours. The survivors found themselves at a staggering altitude, trapped in brutal cold reaching below 30 degrees below zero at night, with no climbing gear, barely any food, and no way to contact the outside world. They used the wrecked fuselage as shelter and tried to make use of anything in the luggage: clothes, small chocolate bars, a few bottles of wine. They rationed the little food they had into near non-existent portions. 8 days after the crash, they heard shocking news over a small transistor radio. Search and rescue operations had officially been called off. Authorities presumed them dead, and the planes that had flown over them in the early days never spotted them because the white fuselage blended into the snow. In that moment, they realized no one was coming to save them. If they wanted to live, they had to rely on themselves alone. They were surrounded by the frozen bodies of their friends, buried in the snow outside the plane, and their hunger reached a point where the body began consuming itself. Roberto Canessa, a medical student among the survivors, was the first to openly raise the idea. If they kept refusing the only food available to them, they would certainly starve to death. He used a piece of broken glass from the plane's windshield and cut the first small strip of frozen flesh. He swallowed it himself first, in front of everyone, to prove it could actually be done. Some refused at first, and some couldn't keep down what they ate. But by the next day, more joined the decision. It wasn't so much a long moral debate as an instinctive response to deadly hunger. They agreed among themselves. If one of them died later, the rest were permitted to use their body to survive. 17 days after the crash, while the survivors were asleep inside the wrecked fuselage, a massive avalanche struck the site suddenly, close to midnight. The snow surged into the fuselage and completely buried the survivors as they slept, killing 8 people by suffocation under the snow, among them the team's own captain. The remaining survivors were trapped inside the fuselage, buried under snow for 3 consecutive days, unable to get out due to a snowstorm raging outside. During this time, they were forced to use the same pieces of glass and metal to dig a small tunnel through the snow just to breathe, while trapped alongside the bodies of their friends who had died that night. After this second disaster, the remaining survivors, now only 19, realized that waiting was no longer an option. Someone had to go out and find a way to survive. After the avalanche, 3 of the survivors, Nando Parado, Roberto Canessa, and Antonio Tintin Vicentin, decided they would not wait for death in silence. On December 12th, they began climbing the mountain facing them with no real climbing gear and no clear map, relying on a compass and a faulty altimeter that misled them about their true altitude. After 3 grueling days of climbing, Tintin was sent back to the fuselage so that the remaining food would last long enough for Parado and Canessa alone to continue the dangerous journey by themselves. They walked for long days across endless snowy peaks, believing at first they were close to the Chilean plains, but in reality, they were much farther away than they had imagined. After 8 days of continuous walking, they finally reached a green valley, showing signs of life, cows, and a river. On the opposite bank, they spotted a man on horseback named Sergio Catalan. Because of the noise of the river, he couldn't hear their shouting, so Parado wrote a note on a piece of paper, tied it to a rock, and threw it across the river to him. "I come from a plane that crashed in the mountains. 14 people are still alive on the mountain. Please, come." Sergio took the note to the nearest point of contact and relayed the news to the Chilean authorities. On December 22nd, the Chilean Air Force sent rescue helicopters to the crash site through terrain so difficult they could only land on half a wheel. After 72 days of cold, hunger, and death, the remaining 14 survivors were rescued in 2 phases between December 22 and 23, 1972. Of the 45 people who had been aboard the plane, only 16 returned alive. When they arrived at the hospitals in Santiago, the whole world was following the news, and the joy over their survival quickly turned to shock when they admitted what they had done to stay alive. Roberto Canessa, who later became a well-known cardiologist, defended their decision in interview after interview over the years, saying the choice was less a moral one than a necessity for survival forced on them by nature. The other 14 survivors returned to normal lives. Doctors, architects, lawyers, and even motivational speakers around the world, telling their story as a lesson in resilience, not a tragedy to be ashamed of. To this day, the surviving members gather every December 22nd, the date their rescue began, to honor the memory of the friends who never made it back and to celebrate the miracle of survival that changed their lives forever.